Often, people in society will look at an older man who may be in an age gap relationship with a much younger Filipina and say, how could she possibly love him? Or that he must only be into her because he's a dirty old man. Yes, I'm sure that if you haven't thought this yourself, then you most certainly have heard someone say it. But is this true? And who even says that love is a requirement for all relationships to be happy? Or what does love even mean? In this video, I'll answer all these questions and much more. So if you're thinking of an age gap relationship with a Filipina, or perhaps you're already in such a relationship, then be sure to buckle up and stay with me here. Just before we dive into the video, feel free to pause it right now and write what you believe love is to you, and even if you believe love is required in all relationships to succeed. If you enjoy this channel, then be sure to subscribe and press the bell notification to receive all future videos. Now, I believe that the idea of what love actually means will be unique to each of us. For sure, some of us may have similar ideas, but for others, they may think that love is overrated or unnecessary to have a meaningful relationship. For some, as we get older, the romantic notion of love may become stale, and other factors in life may become far more important. An older man may see a woman who cares for him as more ideal than a woman who gushes over him and is always trying to show affection. Now, I'm not saying that this is the same for all older men, but certainly it is the case for some that I've spoken to over the years as a relationship counsellor. It seems the idea of love in a relationship is a must when we're younger. The thought of being in a serious relationship with a woman, if we didn't love her, would be seen as improper to say the least, and people may even cast doubts over your character. For a young couple to be head over heels in blind love is a nice thing to see, and something most of us can relate to, even if it never worked out in the end. For some elderly men, they may be still looking for their last chance at love, and for others, they may feel love is for the young, or they may have even lost faith in love over the years and think it's overrated and no longer for them. But is love really even a requirement for a couple to be happy in a long-term relationship? Well, to be honest, many years ago I would have said without love, a relationship won't succeed long-term. But what I've come to learn by chatting to many men in large age gap relationships with a Filipina is that many of these guys may be rather fond of their Filipina, but they draw the line at calling it love. To these guys, love is what we spoke about earlier, where a couple is gushing over one another constantly. Many older gents just don't want that type of relationship anymore. But does this mean a man in his twilight years who doesn't want love, but more so a companion, will be less happy than a couple madly in love in their 20s? Well, again, it comes down to what one's own definition of happiness is, and it's not for someone else to tell us we should be a certain way or feel certain things to say that we're happy or in love. I'm a firm believer that happiness and love comes from inside our own thoughts and feelings, and we can rather easily switch these feelings on if we wish, or equally, we can suppress these feelings should we choose to, either consciously or unconsciously. It's very possible for someone, a man or woman, to decide in their own mind that love is not for them. But this doesn't mean they have to give up on the idea of having a relationship. What it does mean is that person needs to find someone who has a similar mindset around what they want from their partner in a relationship. Does she want love and romance, or is she happy to forgo those things and be happy with fondness and companionship? What we often see in age gap relationships with a Filipina is that the much older man isn't looking for blinding love like he did when he was 20. And most likely, this requires far too much energy and emotion, which such a man simply doesn't have time for any longer. He may not want to be alone in his older years, and so he looks to enter a relationship with a much younger Filipina. Now, whilst this is good for the man, what about the younger Filipina? As we spoke about earlier, most younger people believe in love and find it a very exciting part of life. So, should a young Filipina in the prime of her life forgo the experience of passionate love to be with a much older foreign man in what may be described as companionship rather than a loving relationship in the true sense of the word? Well, again, this may very well come down to the Filipina's interpretation of what love is, and if she feels she requires love to be in a relationship with someone. Now, let's not hide the fact, by virtue of the Filipina being in a relationship with a much older man, she'll get a richer life than she currently leads in the Philippines. Does this allow her, in her mind at least, to convince herself that blinding love or attraction is far less important than having money and living in a decent house with running water? And so, this becomes far more important than her want for a truly loving relationship. Simply, she may sacrifice in one area to gain in many other areas. And let's not forget the fact here that by her being with an older man, she'll see this as an opportunity to help a family who may be having a rather tough life. I've even known of some cases where the Filipina's family have pushed her towards such a relationship because they knew how it would benefit their family. But mostly, Filipinas are much smarter than some may give them credit for, and they may view love and relationships far differently to how we do so in the West. Many Filipinas may not believe that they need to be physically attracted to a man to have a happy relationship together, or at least to start a relationship together. Many believe in the phrase, learning to love, which simply means she may believe that as time goes on, her fondness for the man will lead to love, and again, perhaps it can if she wants it to. What she firmly believes in her mind will play out emotionally over time. If she wants to find love for someone, then that will come, and if she doesn't, it will be suppressed. So for a young Filipina in a relationship with a man 40 plus years her senior, things may not be quite as bleak as many might try and tell you. In fact, many do have wonderful lives together where each are committed to one another, they care for one another, and they respect one another. Simply, each provide the other with what they may require in a relationship, which, yes, may be somewhat different from what you or I may require. But as I said at the very start, we all have a different idea of what love is, and even if it's required to make a relationship work long term. So whilst many of us may think that without love you have nothing, but I can tell you for some this is not the case, and indeed they do go on to have very long-lasting and happy relationships together. You'll often be able to pick out such couples because they're not overly affectionate with each other, or they may not even vacation together. They may be living in the man's country and she may go home on her own to visit her family. To those on the outside, they may think that this is strange or the relationship is broken. But to that couple, they're very comfortable with how this works. So always remember, when you see a foreigner in an age gap relationship with a Filipina, it's not always as it appears. If you're looking for more valuable free information and tips around Filipina age gap relationships, then be sure to check out my extensive playlist on screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.